The storm broke the sky wide open, each flash of lightning stitching white scars across the prairie. Thunder rolled like cannon fire, shaking the ribs of the earth. Elias Crowe rode alone, a dark figure bent against the rain, his hat brim streaming water, his coat heavy with mud. His horse, a warm bay gelding, snorted clouds into the storm air, hooves striking the soaked ground with a steady rhythm that echoed loneliness. Elias was used to storms. He had carried storms inside him ever since the war, the kind that never blew themselves out. But even storms did not make him stop. What stopped him now was the sight below the ridge. At first, she looked like a rag of cloth snagged on a fence post. But lightning lit her face, pale and streaked with rain. A woman, bound upright to a wooden post, wrists lashed above her head, dress torn and clinging to her frame. Her hair was plastered across her face. She lifted it just enough to see him, just enough for her lips to form words that the storm carried clearly across the hollow. "I'm just bait," she whispered. The sound of it cut through him sharper than the lightning had. Elias froze in the saddle. He knew the trick. Bandits in this country had clever cruelty. Leave a girl tied and helpless where the road bent. A decent man would stop. Mercy always drew fire. He scanned the ridgeline. The trees leaned in the wind, their shadows too thick, too patient. He knew eyes were out there, predators waiting. His horse shifted uneasily, ears flicking. The gelding knew too. Elias' hand hovered near the colt at his hip. He should turn away. Ride on. Survival was a choice you had to make every day out here. His life was worth more than a stranger's. That was the logic men lived by in these badlands. But he didn't move, because the girl's voice, the way she said it, pulled up something buried. Alma, his wife's face, fever and fading in a firelit room, whispering for water she couldn't drink. Alma's hand slipping from his grasp before dawn. He'd buried her on a hilltop behind the mesquite windbreak and never forgiven the world for taking her. Elias closed his eyes a moment. When he opened them, the decision was already carved into him. He clicked his tongue. The gelding obeyed. They moved down the slope into the hollow. The girl, Clara, he would learn soon enough, watched them approach with an expression that was a relief. It was resignation, as if she knew what kindness cost, as if she pitied him for being the sort of man who couldn't ride past. He kept one eye on the rope, binding her, the other on the trees. His knife gleamed as he slid it from its sheath. "Hold still," Elias said. The rawhide was swollen from the rain, biting deep into her wrists. He worked the blade beneath it. The rope gave with a wet snap. Her arms dropped limp, and she nearly crumpled. Elias caught her under the elbow, lifted her to her feet, and half shoved her toward the horse. "Up," he ordered. She obeyed without a word, scrambling awkwardly onto the gelding's back. He swung up after her, settling in the saddle as her trembling hands clutched his coat. He dug in his heels, urging the horse forward. The first rifle crack split the storm. A bullet tore the brim of his hat clean. Another shot rang. Dirt spat up where his horse's hooves struck. Clara pressed her face into his back, but didn't scream. That was something. Elias leaned low over the horse's neck, urging speed. The gelding thundered through the grass, hooves hammering the sodden earth. Behind them, shadows burst from the trees, riders giving chase. 4, maybe 5, just like Clara had said. "Hold tight," Elias muttered, though her grip told him she already was. The storm boiled around them, rain needling their faces. Elias steered toward a dry wash he knew would muffle the sound of hoofbeats. The gelding stumbled, recovered. Bullets hissed by. One struck a rock ahead, spraying shards into Elias's cheek. He didn't flinch. He couldn't. A rider closing on their right, rifle raised. Elias drew his Colt, fired twice. The man toppled sideways, hat flying, horse screaming as it bolted riderless into the storm. The gelding veered left, hooves slipping in the wash mud. Another pursuer pressed in on the opposite side. Close enough Elias could see his yellow teeth bared in the lightning glow. Elias fired again. The shot missed, but the man's return fire clipped the gelding's haunch. The horse cried out, staggering. Clara gasped, "Easy, boy." Elias growled, steadying the reins. Stay with me? The gelding pushed on, wounded but alive. Elias aimed them toward the badlands looming ahead, their jagged cliffs carved into a maze of stone, a place a man could lose enemies, or be trapped by them. Bullets chewed the ground. Voices shouted behind. The storm's fury began to shift east, leaving a ghostly hush of rain and thunder receding. The chase echoed sharp and merciless now. Every hoof beat a drum of survival. They plunged into the bluffs. Stone walls rising on either side, water sluicing down red clay faces. Elias picked the narrowest path, one no man with a rifle could line a clean shot through. The gelding sides heaved, lungs rattling, but it pressed forward, guided by instinct and Elias's harsh whispers. A rider tried to follow too close, wedged in the passage, cursed, and had to pull back. Good. Every second gained was another breath of life. They burst into a basin half flooded by the storm. Water splashed high as the gelding barreled through. Elias risked a glance back, shadows on the ridge, but distant now. He reined into a shelf of rock overhanging dry ground. They slid under it, sheltered at last. Elias dismounted, legs stiff, and helped Clara down. She stumbled, nearly falling, but he caught her. She looked up at him with wide, haunted eyes. "You should have left me," she said, her voice flat, hollow. "Maybe," Elias said, reloading the Colt with practiced ease. "But I didn't." "Why?" "Because you said it out loud." He met her eyes. "You knew you were bait. That's a cruelty I couldn't ride past." She stared at him, uncomprehending and understanding all at once. "They killed my brother," she whispered. "Took our wagon. Said they'd trade me for ransom. If not," her voice broke, "you saw what not looks like." Elias nodded once, grim. He had seen it, too many times. Above them, a horse clopped carefully over stone. A shadow passed across the gap in the rock. A voice followed, smooth and sharp. "Well now," it drawled, "you cut the rope?" That wasn't polite. Elias knew the voice belonged to one she had warned of, the man with the scar, the one in the black hat. Clara stiffened. Elias raised his Colt, stepped from the shelter, and let the storm-washed light fall across him. "I reckon I did," Elias said. The scarred man smiled. "Then let's tie it again." The shack creaked against the evening wind, its boards shifting as if they remembered better days. Elias set the gelding inside the crooked fence and listened to the land. No hoofbeats yet, no laughter carried on the wind. But he knew Ash and his men weren't far. Men like that didn't give up. They circled like vultures until bones gave in. Clara sat by the small fire Elias coaxed from damp timber. The glow caught her face, a face too young to be carved by such fear. Her wrists, bound too long, were raw and angry beneath the strips of shirt Elias had tied. She flexed them against the sting, but she didn't complain. "You should have left me," she said again, quieter now. Elias sat across from her, rolling a cartridge between his fingers before slipping it into the Colt. "Maybe," he admitted. His voice was steady, but his eyes stayed fixed on flames. "But I didn't." She studied him like she wanted to believe there was more to say. When he offered none, she stared into the fire, letting it draw words from her instead. "My brother thought we'd find better in Denver. Said the railroad needed strong arms, and we'd get a roof before the first frost. He was 19. Her voice faltered. They cut him down for smiling, like smiling was an insult. Elias listened, jaw hard. The crackle of the fire filled the silence her grief left behind. He thought of Alma again, of how she smiled through fever, smiling because she knew he needed it more than she did. "You carry him with you," Elias said. Clara blinked at him. "What?" "Men like Ash hate smiles because smiles mean the world can still be bargained with. You smile. You make a promise that tomorrow is worth the fight. That's what your brother carried. Now you do too." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. She wanted to argue, but the words refused her. Outside, the night grew heavy. Coyotes called, far and thin. Elias checked the door latch, though it wouldn't stop much more than a curious wind. He knew this shack wasn't a fort. It was a pause, and pauses ran out. When he turned back, Clara was asleep against the wall, head tucked, exhaustion claiming her. He envied her the mercy. Sleep rarely came for him, not cleanly. He was pulling his coat over her shoulders when the hair on his neck stiffened. A sound outside, barely more than a shift of weight. Not hoofbeats. Something softer. Elias moved to the door, coat low in his hand. A figure separated from the shadows. Tall, spare, moving with a grace the land seemed to respect. The man wore leather leggings beaded with patterns like rivers and storms. His hair was braided. A hawk feather caught in the braid's fall. A bough rode his back. A rifle slung across his shoulder. He paused at the edge of firelight. Clara startled awake, breath sharp. "One of them," she whispered. Elias lifted his hand. "No, not theirs." The stranger studied him in silence, gaze settling briefly on Clara's bandaged wrists, then on Elias, then on the horse outside. His eyes held no malice, only measure. "You're welcome by the fire," Elias said. The man stepped inside, not cautious but deliberate, like a hawk choosing where to land. He crouched near the fire, palms hovering over the heat. Then he reached to his belt, unhooked a rawhide pouch, and tossed it across the floor. Elias caught it. Inside were dried strips of meat and 2 shriveled berries. "For strength," the man said, his voice low, touched with the cadence of pine in stone country. Elias nodded. "Obliged." Clara hesitated, watching. "Are you with them?" she asked, meaning Ash and his men. The man shook his head. "I am with the land." He tipped his chin at the gelding. "Your horse bleeds little. Brave. But push him too long. He will not be brave any more." Elias allowed himself the faintest smile. "Noted." The man reached into the dirt with his finger, drew a crooked line. A ridge. A basin. He tapped at the bends. "Bad men ride here. They wait here." He moved his finger again. "They do not know this way." He scratched a squiggle that curved away into safety. "You know these cuts." Elias said, "I know the ways water chooses," the man replied. "Men are worse at choosing." Clara leaned forward despite her fear. "Will you help us?" The man studied her, then Elias. "Help is a word that wants paying back," he said. "I prefer quieter words." "What should we call you?" Elias asked. The stranger considered. "Gray Hawk. If you must speak me." "Elias Crowe." "Clara," she said, her name small but steady. Gray Hawk inclined his head once to each. He took up a juniper twig, chewed its pith, and smeared the paste gently over the gelding's wound. The horse shivered but calmed, its eyes softening under his touch. Elias watched the simple economy of motion and felt something shift inside him. Trust was a rare currency out here. Gray Hawk spent it without asking first. The fire sank to coals. Clara's head tipped again, sleep pulling her under. Elias sat with his back to the wall, coat resting across his lap. Gray Hawk positioned himself near the door, where a man could rise and vanish in the same breath. "You have seen too much fire," Gray Hawk said quietly, eyes on Elias. Elias didn't answer at first. The old memories were close. "Fire takes what it can reach," he said. "Men help along." Gray Hawk nodded. "The Scarmouth man. He hurts for joy. He will come. He smells where you've walked." Elias glanced at Clara, asleep now but restless even in dreams. "She thinks she's still bait." Gray Hawk's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Bait has teeth if taught to bite." The word sat heavy in the shack. Elias looked back at the fire, at the last flame curling down into ash. The thought took root. Maybe she could learn. Maybe she had to. Outside, a coyote yipped once. Another answered. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of horse and something sour, human. Elias stiffened. Gray Hawk was already on his feet, bow in hand. "They're close," Elias whispered. Gray Hawk nodded. 3. 1 high, 2 low. Scarmouth waits by water. He thinks you will go where men go. We will not. Elias shook Clara gently awake. She blinked, startled, then focused. He handed her the long rifle. "You pointed," he said. "Only if you mean it." She nodded, jaw set. The girl who whispered she was bait was gone. What looked back at him now carried something harder. Gray Hawk motioned them outside. The night smelled of sage and damp stone. Stars scattered above, cold and sharp. They moved along the creek bed, its shallow water laughing over stones, hiding the sound of their steps. Gray Hawk led, silent, sure-footed. Elias followed with Clara at his back. At the far bend, Gray Hawk crouched, motion low. Across the water, a shape fused with shadow. A horse. A man, patient as winter. Ash. Elias felt Clara's breath catch behind him. The scarred man waited. He could wait all night. Gray Hawk leaned close, voice like gravel in water. "Soon," he said, his mouth curved in the faintest smile. Let them try to tie the rope again. The creek's voice filled the canyon, a restless sound that seemed older than men or their quarrels. Elias crouched on a shale shelf, Colt steady in his hand, eyes on the figure waiting across the water. Ash sat his black horse like a man born to saddles and scars. Even in the starlight, Elias could see the cruel smile tugged permanent by that cut at the corner of his mouth. "Rancher," Ash called, voice smooth, carried by the water. "You cut rope clean, but rope's only half the bargain. You cut it, and the consequence still binds." Elias said nothing. He knew the game. Men like Ash want to talk you into giving yourself away. He let silence answer for him, his Colt speaking its own quiet language in his grip. A click above. Another shadow. One of Ash's men on the high ground. Elias flattened as the bullet tore grit beside his cheek. He rolled, scanning. Then a third sound, a low whistle, sharp as a hawk's cry. The man above gave a choked grunt. He tumbled lifeless down the slope. Gray Hawk appeared from the dark, bow bent but calm, the hawk feather in his braid catching faint light. Two more shadows pressed low along the bank, water splashing at their horses' legs. Elias fired twice. One rider pitched into the creek, rifle vanishing beneath black current. The other leaned into the willows, rifle raised toward Clara's hiding place. The girl did not freeze. Her shot cracked through the leaves. The man howled, twisting sideways, weapon spinning from his grip. His horse carried him into the dark, wounded and lost. Ash's grin widened through the scar. "Bait's biting now," he drawled. "That makes it sport." He slid his rifle forward, movements unhurried, as if he owned the rhythm of this night. Elias fired first. The Colt's thunder split the canyon. Ash's shoulder jerked. His horse reared, screaming. Ash tumbled into the water, surfaced, and came up laughing. Blood ran down his arm, but the sound that left his mouth was joy. "That's better," he spat. "That's the fight I came for." He waded closer, water climbing his thighs. His rifle cracked, splintering rock where Elias had crouched moments before. Clara's second shot hissed wide, sending up spray. Gray Hawk moved silently along the ridge, bowstring humming. Another arrow drove into the stock of Ash's rifle, skewing it useless. Ash cursed, tossed the weapon, and drew a knife that gleamed silver. The creek churned between them. Ash came fast, faster than a man his size had a right to. Elias met him at the lip, Colt spitting flame. One shot clipped water, another tore fabric, but the scarred man didn't fall. He slammed into Elias, both crashing into the shallows, rolling in mud and stones. The knife slashed for Elias's throat. Elias caught the wrist, muscles straining, the blade quivering above him. Pain lit his ribs where Ash's knee pressed cruelly. Then Clara's voice. "Elias." The distraction cost Ash. Elias twisted, the knife slipping. The creek stole it away. They grappled, hands searching for purchase, faces inches apart. Ash's eyes blazed with savage delight, teeth red with blood from the torn scar. Gray Hawk appeared above them, silent. He pressed a hand to Ash's wrist. Just enough weight. The scale shifted. Elias heaved. They rolled. Ash clawed for Elias's throat again. His fingers clamped, vision narrowing. Elias choked, stars crowding his sight. Then Clara fired. The long rifle cracked, the shot catching Ash low in the side. His grip loosened. Surprise painted his face, not pain. For the first time, his grin faltered. "You!" he rasped, eyes locking on Clara. She didn't flinch. She chambered again, breath ragged but steady. "I'm not bait," she said, and fired once more. Ash lurched, staggered. Blood poured black into the current. He dropped to his knees, still laughing faintly as though mocking death itself. Then the laugh broke into a cough, and the creek pulled him down. His body drifted, caught on a rock, then slid loose into shadow. Silence fell. Only the water spoke, carrying the last of him away. Elias sagged back, chest heaving, ribs screaming. Gray Hawk helped him to his feet with quiet strength. Clara stood at the water's edge, the rifle heavy now in her trembling hands. She stared at the dark, where Ash had vanished. Elias touched her arm gently. You did what had to be done. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to. No one does, Elias said. His eyes were steady on hers. But you weren't bait tonight. You were the teeth. Gray Hawk crouched by the water, retrieving Ash's fallen knife. He studied it, then tossed it far into the creek. The land will eat him, he said simply. Coyotes, crows. He made his room. Now he lies in it. They gathered what little could be carried. An extra rifle, a pouch of cartridges. Gray Hawk's arrows recovered from wood and stone. The rest, they left for the canyon and the night. By dawn, the Badlands were behind them. The storm had washed the sky clean, the prairie stretching wide and green. Clara rode with straighter shoulders now, not because the weight was gone, but because she had learned to carry it. They stopped at a ridge where the world opened. Far in the distance lay Yarrow Ridge Ranch, its fences of faint geometry against the morning. Clara looked west. What happens when we get there? Elias let the gelding breathe, eyes narrowed against the sun. The foreman counts worth in dollars. It's time he learned people weigh more. She looked at him, uncertainty in her eyes. And after, Elias thought of Alma, of a burned house, of the graves he left behind. He thought of Ash's last grin sinking under black water. After, he said, the land will choose. We just follow. Gray Hawk had already moved apart, standing where the ridge broke into sage. He watched the hawk circle on the morning thermals. I walk where water flows, he said. Here, men build dams. Not my way. He turned to Elias once. If the land speaks my name again, I will hear. And then he was gone, sliding into the sage until the land owned him completely. Clara watched him vanish. Will he come back? Elias adjusted the reins, his ribs aching but his grip steady. Some men belong to the land more than people. But he walked with us when we needed it. That's more than most. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the prairie breathe. Clara broke it softly. Back there, I thought I was just bait. Something to be used, thrown aside. Elias looked at her, really looked, past the mud and torn dress, past the fear still ghosting her eyes. You were bait, he said, honest. But not anymore. Now you're something more dangerous. You're someone who chooses. Her lips trembled, but she smiled faintly, a fragile, fierce smile. The sun climbed higher, painting the land gold. They nudged their horses forward. The ridge fell away, and the long ride began. Toward the ranch, toward reckoning, toward whatever tomorrow dare bring. Elias felt the ache in his ribs, the emptiness of loss, the shadow of Alma still walking beside him. But he also felt something else. A weight shifted, a stone turned smooth by water. Not peace, not yet, but the beginning of it. As the prairie widened, Elias spoke. Not loudly, not for Clara, not even for himself, but for the land to hold him to account. We'll fix what's broken. We'll cut new rope, tie it honest. Then we'll ride on. Clara listened, quiet as a flame catching kindling. The prairie took them in, and the day began to belong to the living again.